Ah, look who finally stopped hiding. Look who finally let the mask slip, crack, shatter into 1,000 irreversible pieces. And now they're all standing there, frozen, mouths half open, eyes wide, processing what they just saw, what they just felt, what they just realized. You weren't supposed to let them see this version. You weren't supposed to drop the act. You weren't supposed to exist without the filter, without the performance, without the carefully constructed version of yourself that kept them comfortable. But something snapped, didn't it? Something inside you just gave up on the charade. Maybe you were tired. Maybe you were pushed too far. Maybe you just stopped caring whether they could handle the truth. And now there's no going back. The secret's out. The real you, the raw you, the unfiltered, unedited, uncensored version of you that you've been hiding behind smiles and silence and small talk is standing in the open air. And they're looking at you like they've just seen a ghost. Like they've just witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. Because they thought they knew you. They thought they had you figured out, filed away, categorized, safe and predictable. But what they just saw, what they just experienced, that shattered every single assumption they built about who you are. They're not just surprised. They're shaken. They're not just confused. They're terrified. Because the version of you they thought was real was just a costume. You've been walking around in disguise for so long, playing the role they needed you to play, the quiet one, the agreeable one, the harmless one who never caused trouble. You let them believe you were soft, simple, easy to read. You let them think your silence meant weakness, that your patience meant you were a pushover. They thought your kindness was naivety. They thought your calm was emptiness. They built an entire narrative around the version of you that never threatened their ego, never challenged their reality, never made them question their own position in the pecking order. And you let them believe it, not because you were afraid, but because it was easier. Because revealing the real you meant dealing with their fear, their jealousy, their desperate need to tear you down. But now it's too late. The mask fell off. Maybe it slipped during a moment of anger. Maybe it cracked when someone pushed you past your limit. Maybe you just got tired of pretending and decided to let them see what's been simmering beneath the surface all this time. Whatever triggered it, the result is the same. They saw it. That flash of intensity. That glimpse of power. That moment where your eyes changed and your energy shifted. And suddenly they weren't looking at the person they thought they knew. They were looking at something else entirely. Someone who doesn't ask for permission. Someone who doesn't shrink to make them comfortable. Someone who's been holding back not out of fear, but out of mercy. And now they can't unsee it. Now they can't unknow it. Now every interaction they have with you is colored by this new information. They're looking at you differently. They're speaking to you more carefully. They're measuring their words, watching their tone, second-guessing every move they make around you, because they finally understand what you've known all along. You were never the person they thought you were. You were something far more dangerous, far more complex, far more powerful, and they missed it completely. They walked past a storm thinking it was a gentle breeze. They stood next to fire thinking it was a candle. They underestimated you so completely, so arrogantly, that now they're scrambling to recalibrate everything they thought they understood about you. Let's talk about what really happened. Let's pull back the curtain on this moment that's got them all whispering, panicking, rethinking every single interaction they've ever had with you. Because this wasn't just a slip-up. This wasn't just a bad day where you showed a little too much emotion. No, this was a reveal. This was the moment when the carefully constructed walls you built around your true self came crashing down, and what they saw on the other side terrified them, not because you're cruel or violent or destructive, but because you're real, unfiltered, uncompromising. And reality, especially the kind that doesn't bend to make others comfortable, is the most terrifying thing in the world to people who live in illusions. You've been watching them this whole time, haven't you? While they thought they were observing you, studying you, figuring you out, you were doing the same to them. You saw their patterns, their weaknesses, their insecurities. You noticed how they needed to feel superior, how they clung to false narratives to protect their fragile egos. You watched them perform their own versions of fake confidence, fake happiness, fake strength, and you said nothing. You just observed, cataloged, understood. Because that's what intelligent people do. They watch, they learn, they wait. And while everyone else was busy talking, competing, posturing, you were busy becoming something they couldn't comprehend. You were evolving in silence, growing in the shadows, building strength in places they couldn't see. And then came the moment. Maybe it was a conversation where someone crossed a line. Maybe it was a situation where staying quiet would have meant betraying yourself. Maybe it was just accumulated pressure finally finding release. But in that moment, you stopped performing. You stopped playing the role. You let them see the truth. And the truth was this: you are not who they thought you were. You are not soft. You are selective. You are not weak. You are controlled. You are not simple. You are strategic. You've been operating on a completely different frequency this entire time. And they were too busy with their own noise to notice the signal you were broadcasting. Now they're sitting with this information. Now they're replaying every conversation, every interaction, every moment they thought they had the upper hand, and they're realizing with growing horror that they never did. You were always 3 steps ahead. You knew what they were doing before they did it. You saw through their manipulations, their games, their transparent attempts to keep you small, and you let them think it was working. You let them believe they were clever, that their little schemes and social tactics were having an effect. But all along you were just giving them enough rope, watching, waiting, knowing that eventually the truth would surface, and now it has. Now they're dealing with the aftermath of their own miscalculation. They built their entire understanding of you on false assumptions. They created a character in their mind and convinced themselves that character was real. But you were never that character. You were the author watching them read the wrong book. And now that they've seen the real manuscript, now that they understand what they were actually dealing with this whole time, they're panicking, because if they got you this wrong, what else have they misunderstood? If you were capable of hiding this much depth, this much intensity, this much power behind a simple smile, what else are you capable of? That's what's keeping them up at night now. You want to know the funniest part? They're not just scared of what they saw. They're scared of what they didn't see. They're scared of how much you were holding back. Because if that glimpse they caught was enough to shake them this badly, what happens when you stop holding back entirely? What happens when you decide to operate at full capacity, without filters, without restraints, without the self-imposed limitations you've been using to keep peace? They're realizing that you've been handicapping yourself to maintain social harmony. You've been playing at 50%, maybe 30%, just to avoid making waves. And even at that reduced capacity, you were still more real, more intense, more present than most people operating at their maximum. Now imagine what happens when you stop dimming yourself. Now imagine what happens when you decide that their comfort is no longer your responsibility. Now imagine what happens when you step into the full expression of who you actually are, without apology, without explanation, without concern for how it affects their carefully constructed worldview. That's what has them terrified. Not what you showed them, but what you're still hiding. Not what you said, but what you didn't say. Not what you did, but what you're capable of doing. They caught a glimpse behind the curtain and realized the show they thought they were watching was just the trailer. The real feature hasn't even started yet. Let's go deeper into their reaction. Let's examine the specific ways this revelation is playing out in their behavior, because you've noticed it, haven't you? The way they look at you now, it's different. There's something in their eyes, something between respect and fear, curiosity and caution. They're not treating you the same anymore. The casual arrogance they used to have around you, that's gone. The easy assumptions they made about what you would or wouldn't do, those are dead. They're approaching you now like someone approaching an animal they can't quite identify. Is it dangerous? Is it safe? Should they get closer or back away? They don't know anymore. And that uncertainty is eating them alive. Watch how they talk to you now. Notice the hesitation, the words they choose more carefully, the jokes they don't make anymore, the comments they swallow before speaking. They're editing themselves around you in real time, filtering their thoughts, measuring their tone, because they're no longer confident they know how you'll respond. The predictable version of you, the one they could manage and manipulate and control with simple social pressure, that person is gone. In their place is someone unknown, untested, unpredictable, and humans fear the unknown more than almost anything else. They can handle enemies they understand, they can deal with threats they recognize, but you've become an unknown variable in their equation, and it's throwing off all their calculations. Some of them are trying to backtrack now. You can see it in their behavior. The ones who were dismissive before are suddenly friendly. The ones who ignored you are suddenly interested. The ones who talked down to you are suddenly asking questions, seeking your opinion, trying to get back in your good graces. Because they're realizing they misjudged the situation. They're realizing they may have made an enemy without knowing it, or worse, lost an ally they didn't appreciate. So now comes the damage control, the awkward conversations, the transparent attempts to smooth things over, the fake apologies wrapped in excuses. They're scrambling to fix what they broke, to repair bridges they didn't even realize they were burning. But here's what they don't understand. You can't just put the mask back on. You can't just pretend that moment never happened. You can't unsee what's been seen, unknow what's been known. The truth is out there now, hanging in the air between you and everyone who witnessed it. And no amount of small talk or forced normalcy is going to make it disappear. They want you to go back to being the comfortable version, the easy version, the version that made them feel safe and superior. They're practically begging you to hide again, to tuck away whatever they saw, to return to the performance. But you can't, because once you've tasted authenticity, once you've felt what it's like to exist without the mask, going back becomes impossible. They're terrified because they realize they never actually knew you. All this time, all these interactions, all these moments they thought they were reading you correctly, they were wrong. And if they were wrong about you, what else are they wrong about? You've become a crack in their reality, a glitch in their understanding of how the world works. Because in their world, people are simple, predictable, easily categorized. But you've just proven that wrong. You've demonstrated that beneath the surface, beneath the masks we all wear, there are entire universes of complexity that go unnoticed. And that's terrifying to people who need the world to make sense, who need people to stay in their assigned boxes. Your secret wasn't that you were hiding something bad. Your secret was that you were hiding something powerful. You weren't concealing weakness, you were concealing strength. You weren't hiding flaws, you were hiding capacity. And now that they've seen it, now that they understand you've been operating at a fraction of your actual potential, they're having to recalculate everything. How much have you been holding back? How much have you been protecting them from? How much have you been protecting yourself from? These questions are swirling in their minds now, keeping them awake, making them replay every interaction with new context. That time you stayed silent during an argument, was that weakness or was that mercy? That time you walked away from conflict, was that fear or was that wisdom? The time you let something slide, was that passivity or was that strategy? Every memory is being re-examined through this new lens. Every moment is being questioned. And with each re-examination, they're discovering they know less about you than they thought. The foundation they built their understanding on was sand. The assumptions they made were baseless. The confidence they had in reading you was misplaced. And now they're standing in the rubble of their own ignorance, trying to figure out who you actually are, trying to understand what just happened, trying to predict what happens next. But they can't, because you're not following their script anymore. You're not playing by their rules. You're not staying in the box they built for you. You've broken free. And freedom, real freedom, the kind that doesn't ask permission or seek approval, that's the most powerful force in the world. It's contagious. It's inspiring. It's threatening. Because when one person breaks free, others start to wonder if they can too. When one person drops the mask, others start to feel the weight of their own. You've become dangerous not because of what you might do to them, but because of what you might inspire in them. The courage to be real, the audacity to be themselves, the terror and exhilaration of existing without apology, that's what they're actually afraid of. Not you specifically, but what you represent. The possibility that they too are living behind masks. The suspicion that they too are playing roles. The growing awareness that they too are capable of more than they're allowing themselves to be. So they want you to hide again. They want you to put the mask back on. They want you to go back to being safe, predictable, manageable. They want the comfortable lie more than the uncomfortable truth. But you're not going back. You can't go back, because you've crossed a threshold that only moves in one direction. You've seen what it's like to exist without performance, and that changes everything. You've felt the relief of not carrying that weight anymore, and you can't unfeel it. You've experienced the power of authenticity, and you can't unexperience it. The mask is off. The secret is out. And what they do with that information, how they react to this new reality, that's their problem now, not yours. Let's talk about what this means for you going forward. Because this moment, this reveal, this dropping of the mask, it's not an ending. It's a beginning. This is where your real story starts. Not the story they told about you, not the narrative they built around their misunderstanding of who you are, but your actual story. The one where you're the author, not the character. The one where you make the rules instead of following theirs. The one where you exist in full color instead of the muted tones they preferred. This is your liberation day. This is the moment everything changes. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's going to cost you some things. Some relationships that were built on the false version of you won't survive contact with the real version. Some people who loved the mask will reject the face. Some connections that felt strong will reveal themselves as shallow. But here's what you gain: freedom, authenticity, power, self-respect, the ability to move through the world as yourself, not as a performance of what others want you to be, the capacity to build relationships based on truth instead of illusion, the strength that comes from knowing that anyone who's in your life now is there because of who you actually are, not who you pretended to be. And that's worth more than any comfort you sacrificed to get here. That's worth more than any approval you lost along the way. That's worth more than the temporary peace that came from keeping others comfortable at your own expense. You're going to watch some people distance themselves. That's inevitable. The ones who benefited from your silence will resent your voice. The ones who felt superior when you played small will feel threatened now that you're standing tall. The ones who needed you to be weak so they could feel strong will scramble to find someone else to fill that role. Let them go. Let them leave. Let them find another mirror that shows them what they want to see instead of what they need to see. Because you're done shrinking. You're done dimming. You're done apologizing for taking up space. You're done managing other people's emotions at the expense of your own truth. And you're going to discover something beautiful in this process. You're going to discover who actually values you. Not the performance, not the mask, not the comfortable lie, but you, the messy, complex, intense, powerful, real you. Those people exist. They're out there, and they've been waiting for you to show up authentically so they can recognize you. Because like calls to like, truth calls to truth. Authenticity attracts authenticity. The people who are brave enough to live without masks can spot others doing the same. And those are your people. Those are the relationships worth building. Those are the connections that will sustain you through everything else. So let them be terrified. Let them whisper. Let them try to make sense of what they saw. Let them beg you to hide again. You're not hiding anymore. You're not performing anymore. You're not playing anymore. You're done with the masks, the filters, the carefully constructed versions of yourself designed to keep others comfortable. From now on, they get the real thing. And if that's too much for them, if that's too intense, if that's too honest, they know where the door is.